will affect some strengthening measures in development in other democracies. That is the enduring solution. That is the panacea to violent extremist organizations, because as that ideology, false ideology, came down through the Maghreb, they grasped onto it. But we're talking about the Fulani tribes, we're talking about the sheep herders, and also we're also talking about the farmers. Conflict. So all those layered threats is causing that problem, and so it's a false caliphate in which that it can be interdicted, intervened by good governance and democratic norms.
Thank you. General Kurilla, since October 2023, Iranian-backed militias have launched approximately 100 attacks on U.S. forces in Syria. Can you speak to what you are doing to deter Iran and its proxies from becoming more emboldened, especially with Russia and China's growing influence in the region? How do our allies help you here?
So we have a partnership with our partners inside of Syria that we work with in the enduring defeat of ISIS, and the same thing with our Iraqi security forces that we work inside of Iraq for the enduring defeat of ISIS as well. Specifically to the attacks inside of Syria, we continue to bolster our defenses. Our counter-UAS, the supplemental, has 686 million of it for counter-UAS if that is passed. Specifically, though, we have responded to attacks inside of Syria and inside of Iraq with the most recent attack, and we're on about day 46 right now of a temporary deterrence. I have no illusions that this will be enduring, because we do think that they will try and attack again in the future.
Thank you, General. I'm out of time. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from California. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Desjardins.
And thank you, Chairman. Because we got a lecture on the $100 billion supplement that hasn't been passed, I got to agree with my colleague, Mr. Scott from Georgia, that if we would break these things up, they might get legs. Dr. Wallander, in this $100 billion supplement, which our government's very good at writing big checks without really explaining where it all goes, my understanding was $65 billion went to Ukraine. How much of that is actually for military equipment?
Congressman, I believe, I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers right in front of me.
That's the point. $65 billion is a big number. Admiral Aquilino just yesterday was talking about a $10 billion shortfall in unfunded mandates that we need for the China-Taiwan, and I would argue that China is a greater threat, immediate threat to us than Russia. So if we would break these things down, we can actually look at the numbers. It'd be a little easier for Congress to pass and explain to constituents back home where this money's going when we're having so many issues here at home, can't secure our own border, et cetera. But that's not why we're here today. General Kurilla, it's been over 5 months since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, and 6 Americans remain alive among the hostages supposedly in Hamas captivity, while 2 have died. Can you elaborate here about what efforts are being made to bring these Americans home?
Yeah, unfortunately, Congressman, it's 5 Americans that are left alive right now, with the death of 1 announced, I think, 2 weeks ago. In a classified setting, I can talk to you exactly what we're doing.
Okay, but we just don't want to forget about that, and I know you haven't. How much operational control does Iran exercise over its proxy forces? And I ask this because do you lend any credibility to the recent reports of the fissures between Iran and its proxies, as well as among the proxies themselves, and what does that mean for Iran's regional escalation?
I would say Iran has tremendous control over its proxies, particularly in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon.
What steps could the Biden administration and or Congress take right now to exploit the fissures, if you didn't really comment on that, and strengthen deterrence against the Iran-led escalation?
Well, Iran must be compelled to cease their malign behavior and their actions of directing, supplying, funding, and training these proxies.
So do we have plans to interdict that? Are they in place?
So that's when we're specifically talking about, like, the Houthis, for instance. That is one of the lines of effort. We want to deny their ability to be resupplied. That'll take a whole of government, actually an international effort, much like we did with counter-piracy, to be able to go after that, because only 2 ships can resupply the vast majority of the equipment that we've destroyed so far of the Houthis.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly seem undeterred at this point, and Mr. Whitman brought up, or maybe Mr. Lamborn brought up the fact that how do we get at these to deter them? You said that if we could go at the sources, we could stop using very expensive interdiction methods. Why are we not going after them?
So I'll tell you, to restore freedom of navigation in the Red Sea, which is our campaign going on right now in the Red Sea, it's 5 efforts. The first one is to protect the shipping, that's Prosperity Guardian. The other is to degrade their offensive capability. Third is to deny Iran's ability to resupply, which we see and we try and interdict. Unfortunately, we lost Special Operations 1 Chambers and Special Operations 2 Ingram, both SEALs, in that interdiction when we got medium-range ballistic missiles and anti-ship cruise missiles. We have to stop that. We have to increase the international effort to be able to do the inspections on the vessels that are going into Hudaydah. We need to isolate the Houthis in the information environment. We have to impose cost on Iran so that there is consequence to their behavior.
And certainly it's not just an American problem. Where are our partners in the fight? What accounts for more allies and partners not joining the coalition?
So we have 24 partners in Operation Prosperity Guardian. 17 of them are public. There's also an EU mission just this very morning, about 6 hours ago. Our French partners shot down 2 anti-ship ballistic missiles. Our German partners shot an unmanned surface vessel in collaboration with the Eisenhower, and we destroyed a unmanned surface vessel as well. Our partners are out there. They are protecting ships, and there are some that are partnering with us on the offensive actions inside of Yemen.
Okay, let me just finish with this. What steps is the department taking to resume the pre-October 7th progress on Israel's military integration with the U.S. regional partners, particularly building on its integration into CENTCOM and the breakthroughs of the Abraham Accord?
So we work with, my job is on the military to military level. We work with all of our partners in the region. Part of that, we have several efforts that we do, everything from integrated air and missile defense, cybersecurity, maritime security. We do that in these forums that bring these efforts together. I think there's a diplomatic effort on the Abraham Accords.
Okay, thank you, sir. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes the ranking member.
Sorry to belabor the Ukraine thing, but I just want to point out, in 6 months, we haven't had a vote on Ukraine supplemental in the House in any shape, manner, or form. So if you all got a different way to do it, I know there's some who oppose it. And if you oppose it, God bless you, Mr. Gates. Yes, I respect that. But if you actually support Ukraine, you haven't put a vote on in any form, one way or the other. Divide it up, this amount, that amount, the other, but you haven't given the House a vote. And now Ukraine is hanging on by their fingernails, and the only vehicle that we have that can pass is the one the Senate passed. So if you got something else, A, I wish you'd given it to us months ago, but B, any day, anytime, put something on the floor to give us the opportunity to at least have a vote to support Ukraine. Well, we could do this, we could do that. Well, what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? That's a fascinating conversation, whether Ukrainians are dying and why Putin continues to think he's going to be able to take Ukraine. Give us a vote on something to help Ukraine. And the final point on the $60+ billion, I'm going to get the numbers slightly off here, but well over $30 billion of that money is to go to restock U.S. munitions. It's going to us. That's the overwhelming majority of it. I believe the humanitarian portion is less than 10. I'm going to be slightly off on that, but I see nodding heads out there from people who know. So those aren't, but whatever your excuse is, and I've heard every single excuse going back to 6 months ago when I had a meeting with Kevin McCarthy and Jake Sullivan and others, and Kevin was speculating about, well, we could do this, we could do that, what if we did it this way, what if we did it that way? And I said at the time, wonderful, just do it. You know,
Will the ranking member yield for 10 seconds?
I will, and I'm sorry. I just want to try to find some way to get it done because I know there are a lot of Republicans that do want to get it done. So I'm not.
I just want to point out there's
something.
I just want to point out there's a $14 billion Israeli bill brought to the floor that failed a couple months ago, standalone.
I'm talking Ukraine for the moment. Okay, Ukraine. So anyway, I yield back. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlemen's welcome. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. Slotkin.
Thank you, and I firmly agree with the ranking member. Just bring us whatever you want, but bring it forward. They don't need talking points. They need artillery and air defenses. General Kurilla, it's good to see you. You are one of the most decorated officers we have in service now. I was looking through your service record. Panama, Desert Storm, Haiti, Kosovo, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan. You were seriously wounded in Mosul in 2004 and won the Bronze Star there. Help us understand in Gaza, you're engaging with your Israeli counterparts, the military strategy on Rafah and the military strategy for the next day. We struggled with this as a country. The United States struggled with counterterrorism and counterinsurgency. You were wounded in Mosul, and we were back in Mosul, taking it back from ISIS in 2017. What, in your understanding, is the military strategy for Rafah, and do you support that strategy?
Congressman, thank you for the question. My relationship with them is military to military. I do not advise them on the actual day-to-day operations. I do talk to the Israeli chief of defense on a routine basis.
And what is your understanding of the plan?
So what I would tell you, what Israel's overarching plan, what they have told me in terms of just Gaza, is they want to go in after a lot of the leadership and destroy the strategic tunnels that are in there. Strategic tunnels is defined by those that have command and control and the ability to manufacture weapons,
right,
so that they can't use those again. And what I would tell you, when you look at the leadership that's in there, there's 5 brigades inside of Gaza: North Gaza City, Central, Khan Yunis, and Rafah. Underneath those, there are battalions. And there's also specialized battalions, much like we have a UAV units or et cetera, that they have. They're going after the leadership of those to do that. What I do know is what they've told me is they are not going to take action until they have the ability to protect the civilians and move them out of the area. I don't think they have finalized the plan for that until they do. I am not aware of their current plans to be able to do the civilian harm mitigation for Rafah. They are still.
Have you asked them?
I have asked them. They are finalizing that, and they've said they will provide that to me when they're complete with it.
And when you were serving in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, especially as battalion commanders, et cetera, what were your responsibilities around humanitarian aid? And did you give me your sort of responsibilities as a military leader around civilian harm reduction and getting humanitarian aid to those areas where you served?
So at one point, I was the commander of all of Western Mosul as a battalion commander, and we wanted to make sure we took care of the civilians that were underneath our sector of Western Mosul, while also going after the elements that we were trying to fight.
So you worked to facilitate humanitarian aid into those areas, even as you searched and effectively hunted down al-Qaeda and others?
That is accurate, Congresswoman.
Okay, and do you feel like the Israelis are doing everything in their power to maintain as low as possible civilian harm? In your military estimation?
I think they're very conscious of the civilian harm. We talk about it every time I talk to my counterpart. We talk about that. What I'm trying to do, though, is help alleviate some of the human suffering there, and that's coming either through, we just did an airborne operation of aid this morning. We've approached now almost 1 million meals in the north with 8 other countries. We're also working to increase the land line of communication to bring some in. There has been some progress in the last 2 weeks. I talked to Ambassador Satterfield, who is the special representative for humanitarian efforts, and he is seeing some progress on the challenge is internal security and distribution inside of Gaza. And that is effort. There is some progress being made. We just had a conference in Rome with USAID and others on how the distribution will work, and eventually we get the maritime domain as well.
What's your understanding, given, again, the United States, we struggled with this so much in Iraq and Afghanistan, the end game, the day after planning. The fact that you were injured in 2004 and we were still in Mosul and we were still dealing with Mosul in 2017 and beyond. What's your understanding of the military end game for Gaza?
I think they're still working that, ma'am.
Okay, I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady. Chair, I recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Gallagher.
I'd like to follow up on that, maybe attempt to simplify it. I mean, we are fortunate to live in a democracy. And Dr. Wallander, would you say that the United States military in general holds itself to the highest ethical standards, moral and ethical standards?
Yes, Congressman.
Would you say that our military takes great effort to avoid civilian casualties wherever possible?
Yes, Congressman.
Do you believe the United States intentionally targets civilians?
I believe the U.S. military does not intentionally target civilians.
And then in Israel, we have a vibrant democracy as well. This is a great thing. Do you believe that the Israeli Defense Forces hold themselves to a high moral and ethical standard, just as the United States does?
I do believe that the Israeli Defense Forces hold themselves to that high standard.
And Israel does not target civilians and take steps to avoid civilian casualties wherever possible, correct?
I believe that is a true statement, sir.
And is there any evidence at present that they are, you emphasize in your testimony that they have a responsibility to protect civilians? I agree. I think they're doing, to going to great lengths to do just that, and to uphold international law. Is there any evidence that they're violating international law?
I am not aware of any evidence that they are deliberately targeting civilians.
And so contrast that, the high moral and ethical standards of the United States military and our allies in Israel with Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization, correct?
Yes, Congressman.
And Hamas does not care about human life, including the civilians in Gaza, correct?
Worse, Hamas exploits others' concern for civilian life by placing their capabilities and their fighters protected by human shields.
That was going to be my next question. You anticipated the use of human shields. And many civilians in Gaza have died from Hamas rockets landing inside Gaza and Hamas's attacks on civilians, correct?
I believe there have been such validated incidents, yes,
The
Congressman.
thing I'm curious about is Hamas could, if we apply the same standard, they have a responsibility to protect human life. Hamas could surrender today, released all of the hostages, and the war presumably would be over, correct?
If Hamas ended their war against Israel, the conflict could be over today.
A final question on this front. Do you want Hamas to be removed from control of Gaza, or would you like to see Hamas regain control of Gaza at the risk of another October 7th type
The
massacre?
administration fully supports Israel's goal of destroying Hamas's ability to conduct these operations.
Thank you, I appreciate that. General, talk to me a little bit about how do you characterize the relationship between Iran, Russia, and China? I know the expanded influence and presence of China in the CENTCOM AOR is a particular concern for you. Help me understand the connections between these three entities.
So if I could go, Congressman, to just China and Iran, what we are seeing, Iran is selling 90% of its oil, and that is the largest part of their GDP is oil, is being purchased by China. It's all sanctioned oil by the U.S., so Iran is dependent upon China. In effect, China is funding their subversive behavior throughout the region, their malign and subversive behavior. The relationship between Iran and Russia, that really started when they asked for them to provide the one-way attack UASs, specifically the Shahed 136. They started providing complete systems, and they built an actual factory in Russia. And those same Shahed 136s, a very capable system, are now going at a rate of over 100 a week from Russia into Ukraine. And then what I'll talk in a classified setting is the concerns of what Russia can provide back to Iran. And we're actually seeing interest of China interested in purchasing some of Iranian UAVs as well. So it's not interdependent, but it is a cooperation that is happening between all of them.
What do you think China's goals are in the region, in the CENTCOM AOR?
They want to be able to replace the U.S. as one of the dominant forces in the Middle East.
And you mentioned our strategic advantage being our close partnership with our allies, whereas in contrast to our adversaries that have far more transactional relationship. How do you think the CCP views Iran in the region? As a client state, as a source of hydrocarbons that it can
I think
control?
it's a source of hydrocarbons like they do many of the other countries. 50% of their energy comes from the Middle East. They import about 70% of their energy.
I appreciate that. I yield back the remainder of my time.
I thank the gentleman. Chair, I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Pineda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, ma'am, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate this opportunity. Focusing on Niger, clearly we bet big. Okay, we bet big on Niger, and right now we're at a point in which we either want to double down or we want to fold, unfortunately. And look, I get the bet. As I called it in my visits there, it was the Alamo in an area that I also now call an area of déjà coups. Seems to be happening often. But now we're dealing in Niger with a military junta that is basically kicking out our partners. It kicked out France, it revoked a security pact with the EU, and now, unfortunately, the regional security coalitions in that area, ECOWAS, ACRA, G5, let's be frank, they lack strength, they lack credibility. And then after the meeting that you were at, General Langley, with Assistant Secretary Fee, soon after, they ended the security pact with the United States, unfortunately, or at least that's their intention at this point. And I appreciate the direct and frank conversations that you had with the junta at that point, talking about Russia, talking about the potential agreement to sell uranium to Iran. But unfortunately, it appeared it backfired based on their statement. Now, at the same time, during all of this, the United States has formally declared a coup back in October that legally prevents the United States from providing the new regime with security assistance. So it seems that our approach to Niger and our approach to this junta is divided and disconnected. And it's sort of a two-pronged approach in that, one, I get it. We want to support our democracy and our values, but two, we're trying to be friendly with this junta. And it's leading to a point where we have a kind of a judgment of Solomon, and that we're splitting the goals. And what we don't want is it to leave us with nothing, because we know that nothing will be filled by China, by Russia, by Iran. We also know that the VEOs of violent extremist organizations are not going to stop in Niger. There's going to be consequences throughout the Sahel. As the DNI put out its annual threat assessment I think it was recently, the instability in Sahel is going to raise, especially in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, raises the likelihood that the crisis will metastasize and spill over to the littorals of Africa. And so my question to General Langley is, what is our coherent and consistent strategy towards Niger? And what do we plan to do to prevent Russia, China, and Iran from filling that void? And what do we plan to do in order to continue our effort, which I think is necessary, to go after the VEOs in that area?
Thank you, Congressman. I think you framed the dilemma and the challenges extremely well, and I fully agree with your assessment. I would like to clarify that at this point, the CNSP, the self-identified government of Niger has not asked or demanded that the United States military depart. There is actually quite a mixed message. We are following up and seeking clarification. What they have declared is that they have declared the SOFA, the Status Forces Agreement, to be non-operational. They have assured us that American military forces are protected and they will take no action that would endanger them. So while we work through that with them, we are seeking ways to be able to continue to have access and ability to conduct counter-VEO operations. That said, I will just foot stomp something you mentioned, which is countries that are run by military juntas are not reliable security partners, and part of the value proposition for us having access in Niger would be a return to democratic civilian rule in Niger.
Got it. General Langley.
Congressman, I'll just give an operational viewpoint as far as, because this is a question of strategic access at the great power competition level. It's essential. It's essential that we double down within the authorities that we still have after imposition of 7008. But I will just take a regional view on that. We do need to engage with other countries to increase their partnership and capacity. We need more, take the disinformation campaign, we need to hit it front and center, because Russia does have a passing game. Now they have a ground game as well, with the Russian core and being introduced in Mali.
Gentleman's time expired. You're now recognized, gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates.
This is Colonel Mamade Doumbouya, and this is a photo of him. Did we train and equip him?
By name, I cannot identify that.
Well, that's him with a bunch of U.S. service members outside of our embassy. And just months after this photo was taken in 2021, he led a coup in Guinea and threw out the leader. Does that concern you?
Congressman, core values is what we start off with in IMA programs.
Do we share core values with Colonel Doumbouya?
Core values. I will repeat that.
He led a coup?
We do.
So I guess 4 months after that exchange, General Langley, you had General Moussa Bamou overthrow the government in Niger. And it won't surprise anybody here that we trained him. The person who overthrew the democratically elected government in Niger went to the National Defense University, trained at Fort Benning, Georgia. So do we share core values with Moussa Bamou?
Congressman, let me just go ahead and state that core values is what we start off with. But there is no syllabus for overthrowing the government, not in our institutions.
Well, they're learning it pretty well, even in the absence of a syllabus, right? Because if you look at Chad, Burkina Faso, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, in a lot of these countries, the coup is led by someone we trained. Now, I put in the National Defense Authorization Act a requirement for you to issue us a report as to how many coup leaders our taxpayers have funded the training for. That report is due tomorrow. Will we be getting it on time?
I'll do a follow-up on that, Congressman.
Well, I mean, this was the follow-up, right? Because first I asked you in that clip, how many coup leaders did we train? You didn't know. And so then I put it in the law for you to tell me. The law requires you to tell me by tomorrow. So can you give us a preview of coming attractions?
You get that. You'll get your answer, Congressman. But let me say, there's no correlation and there's no causation of U.S. training to these members.
Well, that's what I'm trying to find out, because in like a dozen countries, the coup leaders are people we trained. Like, what a difference a year makes. March 16th, 2023, Secretary Blinken calls Niger, quote, a model of resilience, a model of democracy, a model of cooperation. 1 year and 1 day later, Dr. Wallander, the spokesperson of the Nigerian military, Colonel Amadou Amabrame, says, quote, the American presence in the territory of the Republic of Niger is illegal. A year and a day after our government said they were the model of resilience and democracy, they are throwing us out by the scruffs of our neck. And so is it safe to say